toward the end of Gene Roddenberry's life, he lived long enough to see Next Generation become a major success. So he was vindicated. And one of the side effects was there's a lot of Star Trek coming out. There's not just the Next Generation, there's the movies coming out, there's books, there's graphic novels. And trying to keep things consistent was difficult. One of the most challenging things was there was no standardized reference timeline. Mm-hmm. When was this happen? When did that happen? When was the Federation founded? And putting that together would be a big deal. And there was a meeting. We weren't there, but there was a meeting in Gene's office. How do we deal with this? And someone, and I think it was Gene, suggested, well, maybe we can ask Mike and Denise to come up with a timeline. So we took this as a holy mission. We went through literally every episode and every movie and looked for time references. Mm-hmm. Someone said, "Oh yeah, I learned to swim 10 years ago. So if we knew when this episode happens, we know when that person learned to swim." And so it turned out there was this amazing. We built a spreadsheet, basically to try to prove to ourselves that it couldn't be done, because we knew there was no master plan at that point. And as we built it, we discovered to our complete shock that for the most part, the Star Trek timeline pretty much hung together. But we were also aware that Gene was right. The Star Trek timeline was in danger of falling apart because so much stuff was coming out. So we understood that there needed to be something standard everyone could refer to. It didn't really matter what it was. That is, there were a lot of things. Pick an arbitrary date. As long as everyone refers to the same date, we're fine. And we felt kind of blessed by Gene's suggestion. Because that timeline is still used through today to sort of establish. I mean, it's been tweaked with, and there's modifications, and some things do things differently. But yes, it's the basic timeline, and it became our book, The Star Trek Chronology, from which we have some models. This was a study model made for Star Trek III, mm-hmm. The Search for Spock, when the team at ILM generated a number of what they call study models. That is mm-hmm. very quick concept, simple models, so that the producers and the production designer and the director can look at it and say, yeah, I like this one, I don't like that one. Because it's easier to judge when you're looking at a physical something than it is from a sketch. And they made a bunch of these. This was my favorite because you could tell they were getting a little bit punchy. Instead of saying USS Excelsior, this one says USS Alka-Seltzer. Well, we have some other ships that are behind you. Those, I believe, were made by Greg Jean, and what was the purpose of those ships? These models, yes, were made by the great model maker Greg Jean, who was a good friend of ours. Denise and I did a book called The Star Trek Chronology, and Greg, who besides being a consummate professional, was just as big a geek as the rest of us. He wanted to make some models of ships that from the Star Trek universe that were never seen. Oh. Moments in Star Trek history. And so we said, okay, cool. So this model was his idea of what a Romulan ship might have looked like as described in an early draft of the script of the episode Balance of Terror. Looks nothing like, or very little like, what ended up being. Although, well, and just like everything evolves, this looks like a very basic model. Although he put these panel lines to represent feathers, so he did get the bird of prey notion in there. Mm. This was his idea of the of Zephyrin Cochrane's ship from the as described or as alluded to in the episode Metamorphosis, in which he first went faster than light. This is well before we made, although we showed this to John Eves, who designed the actual Phoenix in First Contact. Mm-hmm. And if you look, you can see a little bit of the influence of this model. But this was, Greg made this. Greg was known for
incredibly ingenious model making, being able to do things with no money and no time. So one of the ways he did it was by where he would occasionally recycle things. So if you look at the command module on this ship, it's actually a reused one of the robots from the movie Batteries Not Included.
Oh.
So there you go.
Yeah.
And this model back here was his idea of what the Valiant might have looked like from Where No Man Has Gone Before, the first Earth ship to leave the galaxy.
Oh. So it sounds like you, as sort of fans yourselves, all got to work together to create these for the encyclopedia, to fill in holes in the Star Trek universe.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, over the years, some of them have been supplanted by what we've seen on screen. But it was just so cool to get to work with Greg on this one.
Yeah.
It's amazing.